Hello and good evening and welcome to this webinar on project change management. Before we start, I always like to stress and re-stress and reinforce the necessity to have a roadmap for project management, or more or less like a fixed bearings or a fixed direction or a fixed reference to guide decisions in project management. So in order to make it more direct and more concise, I have summarized my experience, almost 30 years in project management, in my 6 principles for effective project management. And of course, given a competent project manager is on board. So first principle is information, resources, material, site planning, facilities and utilities, plan and schedule. Today we are going to talk about a very, very important subject, which is management of change and change management. They are not the same, and we are going to explain the difference. Now, the principles we have: management is divided into administration and leadership. And when we speak about management of change, traditionally it is administration. However, in agile projects management, the whole approach to change and change management is totally different. The inherent philosophy is still the same, but the communication and leadership approach is totally different in agile. It becomes more of a leadership than an administrative transactional topic. So again, understanding and appreciating change management it's not just very sensitive, but it's very important, but it's also very sensitive. I don't foresee another place in today's presentation to discuss this, so I'm going to just discuss it very briefly now. Change management in the traditional context means we try to limit changes as much as possible. So what does that mean? It means when the owner asks us for a change, we take out the contract and we start to talk to him or try to talk him out of the change he's asking for. And we tell him it's going to delay the project, it's going to cost you more money, it's unnecessary, let's stick to our contract, let's not make a change. Change will complicate things. And this classical project management approach actually meant that project management is an art of stopping people from making change. So it is a communication topic, because in order to communicate with the employer and talk him out of a change, it requires special communication skills to succeed. And actually, it never succeeded, and ends up in a conflict between the project manager and the project owner. So in Agile, the approach is different. The approach is we welcome change, but we also manage it and control it. So we are flexible, and the job of the project manager becomes somebody who is going to perform marketing for changes. He's going to accept changes from the employer and start to market the change to the project team and to the contractors working towards achieving the project. So here it's very important to understand that management of change is not only administrative and transactional, it's also leadership and communication aspect, and it could easily be the most important task or element or function that the project manager has to perform. So when we speak about maintaining visibility using S-curves and earned value analysis, again, it has direct relationship with change management, because when we speak about maintain visibility, we are speaking about monitoring and controlling. And what we really mean by monitoring and controlling is making sure everything is as planned. So if there is any deviation from plans, all plans, including designs, then we have a change. So monitoring and controlling is necessarily interconnected with management of change. So we need to differentiate between project life cycle and project management life cycle. Again, when it comes to change management, we have impact on project life cycle, and it also has impact on project deliverables and project management deliverables as well. So project life cycle will be affected, project management life cycle will be affected by changes, project deliverables are going to be affected by changes, and project management deliverables also are going to be affected by changes. And of course, we have to use project management software proficiently in all projects, including agile projects. Okay, so here again, just to remind you, administration and leadership. Leadership is communication plus emotional intelligence, which is equal to influence, and administration is transactional administration and procedural transactions, or transactions according to procedures. So like I've already discussed, management of change requires, and it is management. So when we say it's management, so it's administration and leadership. It implies very, very strongly to management of change that management of change is both administration and leadership, and it requires proficiency from the project manager in both administration skills and leadership skills. Okay, so change management versus projects management. So number one, projects, any project you can think of, it's about change. If the status before the project and the status after the project are the same, then we do not have a project. A project has to result in a unique product, has to result in an outcome, an output. So if there is no result, we don't have a project. So projects are about change. We undertake projects in order to effect change. So like I said, change management, it's not management of change. Okay, so when we talk about change management is related to organization strategy. So an organization, in order to remain relevant and competitive, has to do strategic change, revolutionary strategic change, or evolutionary strategic changes all the time, continuously. So today we are going to just refer to 3 types of change. We are going to discuss 2 types in more details. However, with regards to change management, so we are going to discuss management of change, and we are not going to discuss change management further. But what organizations need to do strategically to remain relevant and competitive, they need to maintain change through order as well as maintain order through change. So this is the definition of change management in the context of strategic evolution or strategic revolution projects. So what this means, it means whenever organization is in a state in a state of I forgot what they refer to it as, but in a state of order or in a steady state. So what we mean by a steady state or in control and order, it means everything in the organization is going smoothly and there is no unpredictability. So we have order. But when we have order, when we have stagnation, we end up with the organization suffering from what we could easily refer to as cultural decay, or it becomes like they used to refer to Polaroid and Kodak, they become dinosaurs. So irrelevant and incompetitive. So what we mean by change through order, it means there is always have to be continuous improvement, continuous aspiration to do things different, to innovate, to renovate. So organizations need to be to maintain its vitality and to keep its dynamics and does not become stagnant. So this is what we mean by maintain change through order. So again, change management has to do with marketing of a change within the organization. Like we said in the previous slide, all projects are about change. So whenever I have a project, it's going to inflict a change, and I have to market this project internally and even maybe externally to all stakeholders. So marketing the project is change management. And what we mean by maintain order through change, projects are going to disrupt status quo, and disrupting the status quo could result in chaos. So again, we have to control the change in order to have order through change. So what we mean by change management, we mean within strategic context, undertaking the undertaking of evolutionary or revolutionary strategic projects to inflict a strategic change. Okay, so what we are going to discuss today is management of change of 2 types: project change, management of change in projects, or which we call it project, which we call change order management or variation order management in projects, and what we consider from point of view of safety and engineering integrity, which is process plant management of change for process plant, and why project managers, especially when we talk about project managers who are undertaking engineering projects and technological projects, it's very important to understand change to process configuration and its impact. Otherwise, While performing the management of change part 2 of our presentation today, project change management or management change in the context of project, important stakeholders and important information might be overlooked, which could lead to devastating or catastrophic situations. So it's very, very important to understand that process or plant configuration or plant integrity or whatever management of change has to always be part of project management of change. So we're going to start with process plant management of change. And management of change is defined as a formal process that systematically manages changes to any deviation or modification with potential integrity implications to equipment, hardware, and units, previously approved documents, operating philosophies, procedures, processes, organization. So when we talk about plant and integrity management of change, we are talking about change to equipment, we are talking about change to documents, we are talking about change to operating philosophies, we are talking about change to procedures, change to processes, and changes to organizational structure and people. So change is very, very critical. And understanding this kind of process management or safety or risk approach to management of change is very, very, very important. Is a very, very important skill for project managers, because, for example, somebody left the team. So if I am a project manager who's not very, very well aware that change in organizational structure or employees who fill certain boxes in my organizational chart, when change happens to them, is a critical change that needs to be managed, I might overlook the absence of a very, very important resource to find out in a very, very bad timing that I no longer have this important resource. So it's very important for project managers to always include management of change from the perspective of integrity, not just from the perspective of contracts, because the second part we are going to discuss, which is project management of change, we are talking about management of changes to the contract, which of course, when you change the contract, it will impact the cost and time. So many project managers will think that management of changes only is project management of change and overlook the very important configuration and integrity management of change, and maybe they don't possess the knowledge and skills to fulfill such duties. So the objectives of management of change is to ensure proper level of review is applied to prevent adverse HSE effects from change. Ensure the integrity of the installation and the impact to people, environment, asset, and reputation is not compromised by performing adequate evaluation of hazards related to change. How we actually do it in reality, we have a very comprehensive list of signatories, and we use it as a cover page. Somebody will document the change, whoever is responsible for the change owner we have a special form for documenting the change, And we have our HSE manager signature, and he will have to state if it has impact on safety or not. We have our quality manager, if it has impact on quality or not. Our HR manager, if it has impact on HR or not. And we have signatory for operations manager and impact or not, and so on. So all key personnel have to sign on each and every change, because otherwise some important stakeholder might not review and approve a change, and this will result in impact in his function. And of course, when an impact hits a key person's function, it's going to hit the entire body of the project and organization. So here we say to ensure proper level of review. This is what we mean. We have signatories for people to sign off on each and every change request to ensure integrity and so forth. So what are the categories of management of change within the context of what we refer to here as process management of change? We have engineering management of change, which means changes to design. We have procedural management of change, which means changes to approved operating procedures. We have organizational management of change, which means changes to the organization structure. And we have technical scope of work management of change, which is change to the approved contract technical scope of work. And here, the final one, it's the same as the project management of change, which we are going to discuss further in the second part of this webinar. Okay, so overview of engineering management of change. We have a permanent engineering change, which is a change that is intended to remain in place indefinitely. Comprehensive risk assessment studies shall be conducted to assess the change and ensure the risk associated with the change is alarmed. And we have temporary engineering change. The intent of this change is to remain in place for a specified period only. After that period, the changes will either be normalized or implemented as a permanent change. Both cases, changes, either permanent or temporary, in both cases, risk has to be assessed and alarm has to be confirmed. Actually, when I used to work in the oil and gas sector, the rule related to management of change, or how our chairman used to put it, he said management of change means one thing: no change. Of course, no change unless authorized. So here it was to make it very simple to everybody, from the smallest and the most junior employee to the very top of the organization. It had to be made repeatedly very clear by the chairman that management of a change is sacred. And in a nutshell, it means no change. Do not perform any changes. Of course, you can perform changes only after they are documented and the documented change goes through the proper channels, the loop of proper channels, and obtains the necessary approvals. Otherwise, no change. So examples of engineering management for change, we have change to control and safeguard systems. This happens a lot. For example, for a reason, I have more overflow in drain water than normal. So what I need to do, I need to change the alarm setting because I'm getting a lot of alarms. So I need to change or override the alarm setting so that I know I have overflow in a certain place of water and I don't want the alarm to keep going on. So I just change. For example, I used to have the alarm at 40 centimeters water level. I want to change it to 60 centimeters water level. Even though it appears to be a very simple change, such change and such alarm override resulted in one of the worst accidents in the history of the oil gas. It's actually the worst, not one of the worst, which is Piper Alpha. Piper Alpha happened because such a change happened by some technician who performed override to some gas leak around some pumps, thinking that it is a false alarm. And he just did a change which resulted in the accident of Piper Alpha. So changes to control and safeguarding systems, change of layout and specification. Of course, this is a big change. So it will necessarily go through proper channels, but the first one used to be done without proper channels. Now it is part of the work permit system, and it is part of the standard management of change procedure. It's a very special work permit, and it's the kind of work permit that has to go through a management of change loop. So change the type of chemicals, method of injection, etc. Again, this is a major change which by default will have to go through proper channels of management of change. So overview of procedural management of change. So procedural changes mainly involve changes to operating procedures, work instructions, or work practices. Procedures which are affected due to facility and process related changes will be updated as part of that change process. Okay. So deviation, examples of procedural management of change, deviation from emergency response procedures or plans, deviation from design of base fly camps, changes of maintenance inspection procedures. So these are examples of procedural management of change, and procedural management of change are part of the quality management system. So I'm just not going to elaborate in discussing it. So changes to the organizational structure. Now we are discussing an overview of organizational management of change. Sorry. So it's changes to the organizational structure that could directly impact or lead to potential HSE effects. It involves clearly defining the scope and nature of organizational changes prior to conducting risk assessment to determine the risk control and mitigation measures required. Organizational examples of organizational management of change include organizational structure, people, manning level, working pattern, functions, and responsibilities. So an overview of a management of change process involves preliminary screening, identification of change, risk assessment, endorsement, approval, implementation, and close out. Of course, we do not close out. It goes back again to reassessment, and it's a closed loop. It's supposed to be a closed loop, of course, because all our procedures and processes are closed loop to ensure continuous improvement. So we have some roles and responsibilities related to management of change. We have custodian, we have administrator, we have a technical authority. Most importantly, we have approving authority, and this is the person who has the highest signatory level in relation to the change in question. And we have a reviewer, and we have a coordinator. So now we're going to start discussing project management of change, and we are going to just notice immediately that they are one and the same. However, here our focus is on changes to the contract. So we have identify issues, identify goals of a change, collect data, analyze results, collect data, microdata, analyze microdata, strategy of improvement, and conclusion. This is what it's all about, or these are the steps. For example, we had here our process flow for management of change. These are also steps for process flow for management of change. So what's a change order? Change order is a document, because when we speak about contractual, we are speaking about money, we are speaking about time, we are speaking about obligation, we are speaking about specifications, we are speaking about quality levels. So it has to be documented, because we are speaking about rights, privileges for employer and contractor. So a change order, it's a written instruction to the contractor issued after execution of the agreement, which authorizes an addition, deletion, or revision of the contract sum, contract time, or both. What are the kind of modifications a contract might encounter? It requires a change to the contract sum or time, or it does not require a change to the contract sum or time. So we have two types of changes: changes that require changes to sum and time, and we also have changes that does not result in changes to sum and time. It could originate from the owner who will request a design change. It could result from the contractor to suggest a change to facilitate construction, or suggest a product substitution. It could be by the design team to clarify some documents, or to correct errors or omissions. And it could come from the field personnel, which is unforeseen conditions that require modifications, or some other safety related regulators who would have some kind of code interpretation that requires enforcement. So what are some documents which are used to initiate changes? We have request for information, And we have a change order request and we have a change order approval. And the change order request is a document that has details to the fullest extent as with regards to the requested change. And this document will go through a loop of reviewers. And when all reviewers are satisfied, this document is signed by everybody, is given back to the contractor to produce a cover sheet for it, which shall only be signed by the chairman or the person who signs contracts in the organization, the person who authorizes money in the organization. And it will have a very small summary of what's in the change order request, and it will have a cross-reference number. And this change order approval will have a financial number, and it is an addendum to the contract. So we have request for information. Maybe the change will be blocked. And if the request for information results in agreement to proceed with the change, then a change order request will be generated. And once the change order request is reviewed and endorsed, a change order approval document will be produced. So the owner could have a correspondence, just send an email or even just speak to the design team to make some changes. And others like vendors, suppliers, or code officials and others also, they might require to introduce a change. Okay, why is management of change important? Because projects fail too often. We have said that project success rate is like 30% without a certified project manager, and it's around 50 or 55% with a certified competent project manager. So projects are very, very prone to failure. So contributors to a project failure as related to change management: a failure to address excessive change requests or uncontrolled changes. If changes are uncontrolled in a project, the project shall fail. Period. Big changes are estimated, but because they are less visible, the smaller scale changes are omitted. So again, some minor changes, a lot of small changes in a project will also ruin the project. Change requests are handled informally without assessing their implications or agreeing to changes in schedule and budget. So again, it's just unmanaged changes. Failure to identify or engage the stakeholders. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I have to consider process and planned change whenever I am doing contractual change management. Otherwise, I will fail to identify or engage important stakeholders. Poorly planned or managed transitions, failure to address cultural change issues, and more. So we have definitions for project, and we have definitions for project management. We're just going to overlook those. Okay, now let's go to change definitions. The addition, according to Prince 2, the addition, modification, or removal of authorized, planned, or supported service or service component and its associated documentation. A movement out of current state, how things are today, through a transition state and to a future state, how things will be. These are definitions of change. So what are the definitions of change management? To control the life cycle of all changes, enabling beneficial changes to be made with minimum disruption to IT services. This is ITIL definition. PMI defines it as change management is a comprehensive, cyclic, and structured approach for transitioning individuals, groups, and organizations from a current state to a future state with intended business benefits. Change management is the process by which changes to the project scope, deliverables, time scales, or resources are formally requested, evaluated, and approved prior to implementation. This is achieved by understanding the business and system drivers requiring the change, identifying the costs and benefits of adopting the change, and formulating a structured plan for implementing the change. This part describes what we include in a change order request. So these are actually the contents of a change order request. So what are the change management goals? To have a standardized methods and procedures to be used for efficient and prompt handling of all changes. Contributing to meet governance, legal, contractual, and regulatory requirements. So what we mean here by standardized method, it means production of change order request, then change order approval. And what we mean by contributing to meet governance, legal, contractual, and regulatory requirements, it means that we have a list of approvers and reviewers who have all to sign and countersign the change order request to make sure all stakeholders have a say on each and every change. So also another goal is reducing failed changes and therefore project disruption and failure. Delivering change promptly to meet project time scales, contributing to better estimations of the quality, time, and cost of change. Assessing the risks associated with the transition of services. So there is similarity between project management and change management. Like I said, all projects are about change. So an organization that needs to change from one state to another state needs to undertake projects. So projects management is projects requires change management in place to ensure changes are implemented correctly to reduce risk. Change management, significant changes, cost, time, risks are normally implemented through projects. So they are dependency, there is interdependency in the knowledge bases of project management and change management. Now, as a project manager, I have to understand that I have to enforce contractually or even without contract, I have to lay down a rule from the first meeting and put it in the minutes of meetings that we are going to have a cap price on project changes, which is if we reach a cumulative variation in excess of 10% of the original total amount of the contract, we need to renegotiate or retender and contract the remaining work. And according to FIDIC, it says any cumulative positive variation order beyond 10% of the original contract price shall be subject of another contract to be bid out if the works are separable from the original contract. In exceptional cases where it is urgently necessary to complete the original scope of work, the head of the procuring entity may authorize a positive variation order that will make the cumulative value of the positive variation orders go beyond 10%, but not more than 20% of the original contract price, subject to the guidelines to be determined. Provided, however, that appropriate sanctions shall be imposed on the designer, consultant, or official responsible for the original detailed engineering design which failed to consider the variation order beyond 10%. This is very important. If I am a project management consultancy, I have to explain to the contractors and the engineering contractors that they shall be held accountable for changes. It's not an open season. You can make changes however you want. If it reaches 10%, we are going to retender. And if it reaches 20%, we are going to stop the project or whatever. But it has to be clear that changes are controlled. Also, if the designing entity produce estimation that has a failure of more than 10%, it has to be held accountable for negligence, because maybe I cannot afford to pay the 10%. Then all the money that I have already paid will be wasted because I cannot finish my project. So here we have negligence against which the design firm should be held accountable. So we have a similar cycle for change management in projects, and we also have initiators for the project. And of course, we have a change control loop. It's not different from what we already discussed. We assess changes for value and priority. We assess for timing, for cost, and for impact. Change management plan. We have a change management plan plus standard project execution accomplishes scope, schedule, and cost control synchronized with current development, visibility of scope and cost changes, effective team communication, clear roles and responsibilities with regard to managing changes, communication to stakeholders for awareness and approval, consistent quality of deliverables that meet organizational expectations, a consistent decision-making process regarding the implementation of a change throughout the life of the project. And we have, of course, a change management rules. We have a change initiator, requester. We have a change coordinator. We have a change manager. Most importantly, we have a change advisory board. And the responsibility of the change advisory board is to assess the changes, prioritize the changes, responsible for authorizing changes, and further evaluating requests when the change manager determines that there is a high risk associated with these requests, evaluate impact that a requested change may have on all affected parties. Many projects do not have a board or a change advisory board, and you have a project manager who does not have any communication channels to the organization, and he does not have any skills with regards to contract management and to change management. And this will end up with a project managed through compromises, continuous compromises between the contractor and the project manager, and it will have quality shortcomings. So in important projects, you must have competent project managers. Only competent project managers will navigate through organizations that does not have a change board or a change advisory board or a project board. I have seen changes for millions of dollars signed by junior project managers, and they ended up catastrophically for the project and the organization, and all the organization could do is fire the junior project manager after wasting $4 or $5 million, because such project did not have a board, did not have procedure, did not have any controls for change. So change control is very important. Unless you have a competent project management consultancy or a competent project manager, these are the kind of risks as risks related to change management that could face projects and end up in total catastrophe. We have a change implementation team, and of course we have our project manager. Now we have come to the end of our webinar for today, and I thank you very much for your attendance. And of course, if you have any questions, I will welcome your questions through text messaging. And for now, I bid you good night and thank you very much once more.